Humanity had long since expanded beyond the confines of Earth, stretching its reach across star systems and galaxies. But in the farthest fringes of space, an anomaly lay dormant for centuries. A faint distress signal had been detected, one that shouldn't have been possible. The coordinates matched an area of space thought to be completely devoid of life or activity. The Forsaken Edge, a long-lost human stronghold, had been abandoned after a devastating war with an alien race that humanity had thought they had driven into extinction. Or so they believed. Captain Helena Voss stood before the holoscreen, her eyes scanning the data feed. The signal was unmistakably human, though the message was nearly 2 centuries old. The station had been abandoned so long ago that it had fallen off every map, its location erased from galactic records. Yet here it was, a call from the past, breaking through the silence of the void. The distress message had remained dormant for so long, it almost felt like a whisper from the dead. But now it was loud and clear, beckoning humanity back to the edge of the galaxy. Voss's fingers hovered over the console, her mind racing. The implications were monumental. If the Forsaken Edge still existed, it could contain untold resources, advanced technology, forgotten military assets, and strategic data. It could be the key to securing humanity's future in a galaxy filled with rival species and looming threats. The captain's pulse quickened as she keyed in the coordinates, rerouting a fleet of ships to the unknown sector. This was no ordinary mission. It was a call to reclaim something far more significant than a piece of lost history. It was a chance for humanity to regain something of immeasurable value. The crew she selected were the best of the best, soldiers, engineers, and explorers, all elite members of the newly formed Galactic Expeditionary Force. Among them was Lieutenant Laura Finch, a seasoned combat veteran who had earned a reputation for her calm under pressure. There was Dr. Zane McAllister, an expert in ancient technologies who could decipher any forgotten language or decode the most complex systems. And there was Sergeant Raylan Cooper, a brute of a man whose strength and loyalty were unmatched, capable of holding the line against whatever might threaten the team. Voss knew they were the right team for the job, but even she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in her gut. The universe was vast, and deep space held dangers that were often beyond comprehension. The old records spoke of the Forsaken Edge as a place where humanity had been forced to fight a terrible war against a race of aliens who had wiped out entire fleets and colonies. Humanity had won the war, but at great cost. What remained of the Forsaken Edge? What had been left behind in the wake of that conflict? As the fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel, Voss couldn't stop thinking about the implications of the mission. The Forsaken Edge had been a symbol of humanity's might, a fortress constructed to withstand anything the galaxy could throw at it. But after the war, it had been abandoned, left to decay in the vacuum of space. If the outpost had been forgotten by time, why was it calling out now? Her thoughts were interrupted by Finch's voice, crackling through the comms. "Captain, we've entered the sector. No signs of alien activity, yet?" Her words hung heavy in the air, the calm before the storm. Voss turned to face the viewport, where the dark expanse of space stretched endlessly, filled with mysteries and dangers unknown. "Stay sharp," she replied, the weight of the mission settling in her chest. "We're not just looking for answers. We're looking to take back what's ours." The Forsaken Edge was waiting, its secrets buried in the stars. The stars outside the ship's viewport blurred into streaks of light as the fleet made the jump into FTL space. For Captain Voss and her crew, the journey felt like an eternity despite the relative speed. There was no telling what lay ahead. The Forsaken Edge's coordinates had been lost for over a century, and now, as they traveled deeper into uncharted space, an unsettling silence hung in the air. Helena paced the command deck of the lead ship Eclipse, her boots clicking softly on the polished floor. The deep hum of the engines was the only sound that filled the void around them. but it was a sound that now seemed more ominous than reassuring. She was used to the weight of command, but this mission felt different. It wasn't just the unknown dangers of space that unnerved her. It was the sense that they were walking into something much older, something that might not want to be found. "Captain, we've reached the outer edge of the sector," Lieutenant Finch's voice echoed over the comms. Her calm demeanor didn't fool Voss. Finch was a seasoned officer, but even she could sense the unknown looming before them. "Understood," Voss replied, keeping her tone steady. "Prepare to drop out of FTL in 3 minutes. Everyone be on alert. This isn't a typical reconnaissance mission." "Agreed," Finch said, her voice betraying a slight edge. "I'm running scans for any signs of anomalies or hidden hazards. This area feels off." Voss nodded, her fingers drumming absent-mindedly on the armrest of her chair. Her mind drifted back to the briefings. The Forsaken Edge had been a symbol of humanity's greatest strength. It was a massive, self-sustaining outpost, built to defend against an alien race known as the Xanthi, whose advanced technologies and deadly combat tactics had nearly wiped out several human colonies. Humanity had barely survived, forcing the aliens into retreat, but the battle had come at a heavy cost, one the galaxy was still recovering from. As the fleet emerged from FTL, the blackness of space seemed even more oppressive. The ships slowed to sublight speeds, their engines a soft rumble as they neared the coordinates. For a moment, it seemed like nothing was there at all, just an empty, featureless void. Then, out of the abyss, the Forsaken Edge appeared. It was nothing like they had expected. The outpost hung suspended in space, a decaying wreck illuminated by the pale light of distant stars. Its massive skeletal frame, once a shining beacon of human ingenuity, now looked like a monument to failure. The structure was barely holding together, its exterior scarred and battered by time and neglect. The station's dark silhouette stretched against the backdrop of a swirling nebula, casting eerie shadows in the dim light. The area surrounding it was littered with debris, discarded weapons, broken ships, and mysterious artifacts scattered like forgotten memories. Dr. Zane McAllister's voice crackled over the comms, tinged with awe and unease. "Captain, this is it, the Forsaken Edge, but what happened here? This station should have been intact." Voss's eyes narrowed as she studied the outpost through the ship's viewport. She could feel the weight of the moment, the tension in the air. The Forsaken Edge was a relic of a time long past, but it was still a powerful symbol. And if it had truly been left in such a state, something had gone horribly wrong. "Prepare to dock," Voss ordered, her voice steady but her mind racing. "We're going aboard." As the fleet maneuvered closer, the eerie silence of the station seemed to stretch endlessly. No lights, no signs of life, just the faint hum of the station's remaining systems struggling to stay operational. The closer they got, the more the sense of unease grew. The past was calling them, but the question remained, was it a call for help or a warning? Voss took a deep breath. They had come this far, they couldn't turn back now. "Keep your eyes open, everyone," she said, her voice sharp. "This place holds secrets. We're about to uncover them." The eerie hum of the eclipse reverberated through the air as the ship docked with the Forsaken Edge, its hull groaning under the strain. The moment they crossed the threshold, the station's long-abandoned docking bay greeted them with an unsettling silence. Lights flickered weakly above, casting elongated shadows across the derelict structure. The heavy doors slid open with a reluctant hiss, revealing a sprawling empty hangar. Dust and debris had settled over everything, blanketing the once pristine surfaces. The Forsaken Station appeared dead, yet there was something almost alive in the stillness. "Secure the perimeter," Captain Voss ordered, her voice low but commanding. Her heart raced as the team disembarked, the weight of the moment heavy on her chest. It had been a long journey, but now they stood on the precipice of something forgotten by time. Lieutenant Finch moved ahead, her rifle raised, scanning the vast space of the hangar. Her steps echoed, sharp and deliberate, as if she was testing the emptiness of the place. "I'm seeing no signs of movement," she said, her voice steady. "But I don't like it. This place should have a functioning system of some kind." Dr. McAllister stepped into the shadows, his eyes scanning the walls for any trace of ancient data. "I'm reading sporadic power signatures. It's as if parts of the station are still alive. We might have more luck if we can find the control room." Voss nodded, keeping her composure. The silence of the station was suffocating, as if the entire place was holding its breath. "Stay alert. This place has been abandoned for too long to be empty." As the team moved through the hangar, a strange sensation filled the air. It wasn't just the eerie stillness, it was the feeling of something watching them, just out of sight. The shadows seemed to shift unnaturally as they passed, and every step seemed to disturb a long-forgotten memory embedded within the walls. Their boots crunched over shattered glass and broken equipment, relics of battles long past. "Captain," Sergeant Cooper spoke up, his voice filled with a rare edge. "You seeing this?" Voss turned to find Cooper kneeling by a shattered display console, his hand hovering above the flickering screen. It was a mix of ancient and unfamiliar technology, wires protruding from the wall like the veins of a dead creature, blinking lights and panels that seemed to pulse faintly. He traced the worn lines of the console with his fingers. "It's all half-damaged, but it's definitely some form of communication system. Looks like it was still trying to send out messages, even after all these years." "Can you get it working?" Voss asked, her eyes narrowing as she approached. Cooper tapped a few of the controls, and the console hummed to life, displaying an old map of the station. Then, to the team's surprise, a new message appeared on the screen, an old, half-corrupted transmission. The audio crackled, but the words were unmistakable. "The Xanth, they never left. You must leave now." The message cut off abruptly, leaving a haunting silence in its wake. Voss felt her blood run cold. "The Xanthe," she muttered, remembering the ancient alien race that had nearly destroyed humanity in the war that had led to the Forsaken Edge's creation. If the message was to be believed, the war wasn't over. The Xanthe hadn't disappeared. They had merely hidden, waiting for their moment to strike. "What does this mean?" Finch asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "Did they infiltrate the station? Are they still here?" Voss took a slow breath, trying to process the enormity of what they had just uncovered. "It means we're not alone here." As they moved deeper into the station, the tension was palpable. Every shadow seemed darker now, every creak of metal above more ominous. The walls seemed to close in around them, the station no longer a symbol of lost hope, but a tomb full of secrets and threats. Humanity had always believed it had defeated the Xanthe, but if this station was any indication, the war was far from over. And now they were standing on the edge of a precipice, facing the unknown once more. The team moved deeper into the Forsaken Edge, their footsteps echoing through the darkened corridors as the station seemed to grow colder and more oppressive with each passing moment. The walls, once gleaming with human achievement, were now worn and scarred, covered in layers of dust and neglect. The flickering lights overhead cast an eerie glow, casting shadows that seemed to move with them, as if the station itself was alive and watching. Dr. McAllister led the way, his hands moving swiftly across the damaged control panels, trying to find some way to restore power to key sections of the station. His face was grim as he muttered to himself, working furiously to decipher the ancient technology. The team had come for answers, but each moment they spent here only raised more questions and deeper concerns. "It's all starting to fall apart," McAllister said, wiping a layer of grime from his brow as he examined the wiring. "I can get some systems online, but most of them are beyond repair. We'll be lucky if we can access any critical files." "Just do what you can," Voss said, her voice firm but laced with impatience. They couldn't afford to waste time. not with the lingering threat of the Xanthi hanging over them. Finch was at the rear of the group, scanning the hallway behind them. "Something doesn't feel right," she said, her eyes narrowing. "We've been moving through this station for hours, and I still haven't seen a single sign of life, aside from the occasional flicker of power." "I don't like it either," Cooper grumbled from the front. "The place looks like it's been deserted for decades, but we're not getting any readings that suggest the station is completely uninhabited." Voss felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise. The team had found remnants of weapons, old gun emplacements, and abandoned armor, but no signs of battle. No bodies, no blood. It was as if everyone had simply disappeared. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the corridors, followed by the unmistakable sound of something skittering just out of sight. The team froze, rifles raised, eyes darting to every corner. The sound came again, closer this time, sharp and unnatural. Voss held up a hand. "Quiet," she ordered, and the team fell still, their breath held in the chilling air. Another skittering noise, then a hiss, like the sharp intake of a breath from some unseen creature. The wall seemed to warp, the shadows deepening, as if the station itself was conspiring against them. The hum of the station's failing systems became louder, and the sense of being hunted became palpable. Then, from the shadows ahead, a figure emerged. It was not human. The creature was tall, its skin an unnatural shade of ashen gray, with elongated limbs and sharp, jagged features that resembled some twisted hybrid of human and insect. Its eyes glowed an unnatural green, and its jagged teeth glistened with an ominous sheen as it skulked into view. A low, guttural hiss escaped its throat. "Xanthi," Voss whispered, the realization settling over her like a cold wave. The creature lunged with terrifying speed, and the team reacted instinctively. Finch fired first, the sound of the shot deafening in the tight corridor, but the creature's speed was unnatural. It darted out of the way, using the station's decrepit walls for cover. Voss's heart pounded in her chest as she barked orders. "Fall back to the docking bay. Move." They sprinted down the hall, their footsteps a chaotic symphony of fear and urgency. The Xanthi were real, and they weren't alone. The alien had been waiting, stalking them in the shadows, and now it was clear the station was far from abandoned. The Xanthi had returned, and they had never truly left. As they reached a junction in the hallway, a chorus of guttural hisses echoed through the station. More figures appeared from the darkness, more Xanthi, emerging from hidden chambers and the wreckage of the Forsaken Edge. Voss felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This wasn't just a lost stronghold, it was a trap. The war was not over, it had only just begun. "Get to the control room," Voss shouted. "We need to take back control of this station, or we're dead." The team pushed forward, but the Xanthi were relentless, their movements impossibly fast, their grotesque forms flickering in and out of view like phantoms. The station, once a symbol of human power, had become a battleground once again, and humanity's fight for survival was just beginning. The air in the station had become thick with the acrid scent of battle, and the oppressive hum of the failing systems was now drowned out by the sound of skittering claws and guttural hisses. Voss's pulse thundered in her ears as she led the team through the darkened corridors, their path illuminated only by the flickering emergency lights overhead. The Xanthi were closing in, and the walls felt like they were closing in around them too. "Move," Voss barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. They needed to reach the control room, where they might be able to restore enough power to seal off the station's more vulnerable sections. They couldn't fight an endless wave of Xanthi, not without a plan, but every step forward was harder, as though the station itself was trying to keep them contained. "Captain, they're all around us," Finch shouted, her rifle raised as she spun, firing at another shadowy figure that darted toward them from the dark recesses of the corridor. The shot echoed, and the Xanthi creature dropped with a sickening thud, its body crumpling into a heap. But there was no time to celebrate small victories. More of the aliens appeared, their glowing eyes piercing the darkness like predators circling their prey. The team wasn't just fighting for survival, they were fighting to reclaim humanity's legacy, to survive in a forgotten stronghold that had become their worst nightmare. "Keep moving," Voss ordered, her voice strained but resolute. "We can't stop now." Sergeant Cooper was the first to break formation, charging ahead with reckless determination. "I'll hold them off. You get to that control room." Before anyone could protest, he turned, his massive frame a wall of muscle and fury. With a roar, he dropped to one knee and unleashed a hail of fire at the advancing Xanthi. His rifle cracked with brutal force, cutting down one of the creatures, but the others pressed forward, relentless in their pursuit. Voss didn't hesitate. "Finch, McAllister, stay close. We're almost there." They sprinted down the corridor, the sounds of gunfire and alien screeches filling the air behind them. The Xanthi were more than just enemies, they were hunters, and they were fast, their movements fluid and eerie. The thought of being trapped here, in the heart of the Forsaken Edge, without a way out, gnawed at Voss's thoughts. But she couldn't let fear rule her, her crew depended on her. As they reached the junction leading to the control room, Voss took a quick glance over her shoulder. Cooper was still holding the line, but his ammo was running low, and his movements were becoming sluggish under the weight of the oncoming tide of Xanthi. The air in the hallway was thick with tension, every second feeling like an eternity. "Get to the door," Voss shouted as she slammed her palm against a rusted control panel next to the entrance. The door hissed, but didn't open immediately. Her heart skipped a beat as she slammed her fist against the panel again. "It's not working," Finch yelled, her voice tight with panic. "The system is too damaged." "Then we'll force it open," Voss said, her voice hard as steel. She motioned to McAllister. "Help me." Together, they wrenched at the panel, tearing open the access hatch and exposing the system's manual override. McAllister's hands flew over the exposed circuitry, his mind racing as he tried to bypass the corrupted systems. Every second felt like an eternity. A sound like thunder echoed through the station. The door to the control room shuddered, then jerked open with a reluctant whine. The three of them barreled inside, just as Cooper's voice crackled over the comms. "Hurry, Voss. They're breaking through." The door slammed shut behind them with a resounding clang, and Voss quickly moved to the control station. The lights inside flickered weakly, but the console was partially operational. "McAllister, patch into the mainframe," she ordered, her fingers flying across the terminal as she began initiating emergency protocols. "We need to lock the station down." But even as they scrambled to regain control, Voss knew that this was just the beginning. The Forsaken Edge was no longer just a station. It was a trap, one that Xanthi had set long ago. Whatever lay beyond the locked doors was something they weren't ready for. But if humanity was to survive, they would have to face whatever horrors lingered in the dark corners of this forsaken place. And now, they had no choice but to awaken the Lost Legion. The control room's console buzzed to life under Voss's deft fingers, its flickering screen casting a pale light across the faces of her team. The air felt charged with anticipation as McAllister worked furiously beside her, his eyes scanning the rapidly changing data on the mainframe. The emergency lockdown protocols were in place, but it was clear that the Xanthi were more than capable of bypassing security if they had the right leverage. They needed more than just a secure perimeter. They needed a weapon, something that could turn the tide of this battle. "Captain, I'm pulling up archived files," McAllister said, his voice tight with urgency. "There's something here I don't recognize. It's not part of the original station design." Voss turned, her mind already racing. "What do you mean?" "These files," McAllister muttered, pointing at the data streaming across the screen. "They're military-grade, Black Ops-level tech, hidden deep within the station's archives. It's like they were deliberately buried, erased from the official records. But someone has been working here long after the Xanthi were driven away. Voss felt a surge of dread. Whatever had been hidden on this station could be the key to humanity's survival or their undoing. Do we have access to the schematics for these weapons? Voss asked, her voice steady, though her mind raced. McAllister nodded, though his expression was grim. Yes, but there's a catch. Some of these systems were disabled intentionally. This tech wasn't just hidden, it was sealed. If I try to bypass the failsafes, it could trigger something catastrophic. We don't have time to be cautious, Voss said, her tone hardening. We need everything this station can offer. With a reluctant sigh, McAllister's hands moved rapidly across the console, bypassing security protocols, his eyes scanning each line of code as though it were a living thing. The data was ancient, too old for even his advanced algorithms to handle easily. But after a few tense minutes, the screen flickered and then stabilized. There it is, McAllister said, his voice low but triumphant. The Legionary Protocol. Voss leaned over his shoulder, her breath catching as the data revealed itself. The Legionary Protocol was a project created during the final years of the war against the Xanthi, a last-ditch effort to ensure humanity's survival in case the worst occurred. A prototype army, cybernetic soldiers enhanced with the best of human ingenuity and alien technology. Built to fight the Xanthi, even if humanity itself was wiped out. The screen showed a map of the station's lower levels, buried deep beneath the wreckage, where a series of military bunkers and facilities had been sealed off. These bunkers housed the Legion, hundreds, if not thousands of these soldiers preserved in cryosleep. They had been forgotten, left in stasis for an uncertain future that had never arrived, until now. You're telling me that we have an army down there? Finch's voice cracked with disbelief. Voss's mind raced, the weight of the decision pressing on her. If these soldiers could be revived, they could be humanity's last hope. But there were no guarantees. The Legion was designed for a war that had already been fought, and those soldiers had been asleep for over a century. Who knew what the Xanthi had done since then, or what these soldiers would be like when they awoke? We don't have a choice, Voss said, her voice sharp with determination. We're going to awaken the Legion. She turned to McAllister. How do we access them? McAllister ran his fingers across the screen, bringing up a complex set of codes. There's a primary access terminal in the sublevels, but the path to it is going to be heavily guarded by Xanthi. They've likely already infiltrated the lower levels. We'll need to fight our way through. Voss nodded, her hand tightening around the rifle slung across her shoulder. Then we fight. We fight until there's nothing left to fight for. Finch's eyes gleamed with a fierce, determined light. We're not running anymore. Let's wake up this army and show the Xanth what it means to mess with humanity. Voss turned back to the console, scanning the data one last time. The path ahead would not be easy. But humanity had been forged in the fires of war, and the Forsaken Edge had become their crucible once more. They had the power to turn the tide. Now it was time to awaken the soldiers of the past, and with them the hope of humanity's future. The air in the control room was thick with tension as Voss prepared her team for the descent into the station's lower levels. The decision had been made. There was no turning back now. The Legionary Protocol had been unlocked, and with it, the key to humanity's survival. But awakening the Legion came with its own risks. The lower levels, where the cryo chambers were located, were heavily fortified. And the Xanthi were already infiltrating the station, intent on preventing any resistance. McAllister, can you navigate us through the lower levels? Voss asked, turning to the scientist who had unlocked the Legion's location. McAllister, still seated at the console, nodded grimly. I've accessed the primary maps for the sublevels. There are a few routes, but they're all high risk. The Xanthi are likely aware of the facilities. We'll have to move quickly, or we'll be overwhelmed before we reach the cryo chambers. Voss stood, her gaze hard and unyielding. Then we'll make sure they don't get the chance. Finch checked her weapon, ensuring her rifle was fully loaded. We need to be ready for anything. The Xanthi aren't the only problem down there. This place has been abandoned for over 100 years. Who knows what kind of traps or environmental hazards are waiting for us? Voss nodded, her face set in a determined line. We can't worry about that now. The Legion is our only chance. We move fast, we stick together, and we don't stop until we reach the cryo chambers. Cooper, who had been silent until now, spoke up. You know, Captain, if this place really was a last-ditch effort to save humanity, the Legion might be more than just soldiers. They could have been designed to take on the worst of the worst. If the Xanthi's still here, we'll need all the firepower we can get. Voss's eyes narrowed. That's exactly why we need to get there first. With one last glance at the station's partially functional control center, the team turned and moved toward the maintenance elevator, the only clear path to the lower levels. The long corridor they entered was dark, the faint sounds of the Xanthi skittering in the distance sending a cold shiver through the crew. The farther they went, the more the station's power flickered and sputtered, plunging them into patches of total darkness before the emergency lights blinked back to life. As they descended, the station seemed to grow more alien. The walls were covered in strange markings, alien symbols that none of them could decipher. The air smelled musty, like something long forgotten, as if the forsaken edge of the universe itself had been allowed to rot in peace. It wasn't just the station that was abandoned. It was as if this place had been left to die on its own terms. A loud bang echoed through the station, followed by the unmistakable hiss of alien movement. The Xanthi had found them. Voss's heart skipped a beat, and she motioned for her team to get into position. The hallway in front of them was empty, but it wouldn't stay that way for long. We're not alone, Finch whispered, her voice tense. McAllister's fingers moved quickly over his tablet, checking the station's sensors. There's a patrol of Xanthi moving toward us. We'll have to engage them before they lock us in. Voss raised her rifle. On my mark. Cooper, Finch, take point. McAllister, stay behind us. We can't afford to lose the element of surprise. The team fell into position, weapons at the ready. The seconds stretched into an eternity as they waited in the dim glow of the corridor. Then, the unmistakable sound of alien claws scraping against the metal floors echoed through the hall. The Xanthi were coming. Now, Voss shouted. The team erupted into action, opening fire. Finch and Cooper moved with precision, cutting down the first wave of Xanthi before they even had a chance to react. The creatures screeched in fury, their bodies crumpling under the heavy fire. But there were more, always more. As the Xanthi swarmed from the shadows, the team fought back with all their might, pushing through the horde with ruthless efficiency. The Xanthi's speed and agility were unnerving, but the human firepower and discipline kept them at bay. Voss's pulse pounded in her ears as the last of the Xanthi fell. Their mission wasn't over, but they had survived the first wave. With the lower levels now clear, they could continue their descent. Move out, Voss ordered. We're getting those soldiers. With the team at her back, Voss led them deeper into the heart of the Forsaken Edge, knowing that the real battle was just ahead. The Legion awaited, and with it, the chance to reclaim humanity's future. The deeper they descended into the forsaken bowels of the Forsaken Edge, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air grew cold, thick with the stench of old machinery and forgotten history. Voss led the way, her mind focused on the task ahead. The cryo chambers were close now. Every creaking sound in the darkness, every movement behind them, reminded her that the Xanthi were never far behind. They had to move fast. Stay sharp, Voss muttered, her voice low but commanding. McAllister's fingers flew over his tablet as he led the team down a narrow hallway, checking the maps to ensure they were on the right path. Just up ahead, he said, his voice tinged with relief. The cryo chambers should be on the next floor. The hum of the station's systems, barely functional, grew louder as they moved. But even in its dilapidated state, there was a strange, haunting beauty to the place. Rows upon rows of dormant pods, each holding the promise of something that could tip the scales in humanity's favor. As they reached the entrance to the cryochamber bay, the door slid open with a deafening groan, revealing the rows of stasis pods. There were hundreds of them, perhaps more, each one housing a soldier, frozen in time, waiting to be awakened. The technology that had kept them alive, in perfect stasis for over a century, was a testament to human ingenuity. But now, it was all up to them to bring these warriors back to life. "McAllister, can you access the activation system?" Voss asked, stepping forward as she surveyed the row upon row of pods. "We need to wake them up, now." McAllister moved quickly, his eyes darting between the control panels. His fingers were already dancing across the interface, hacking into the system to bring the dormant soldiers back online. "It's going to take a few minutes. I'll have to bypass the security locks, and the system is old. It might take longer than we expect." Voss clenched her fists, her mind racing. "We don't have time. The Xanthi are on their way." At that moment, a distant noise echoed through the chamber, a series of metallic screeches, followed by a loud crash. The Xanthi had arrived. They were closing in fast. "Move," Voss shouted, turning toward her team. "We'll defend this position. McAllister, you keep working." Cooper and Finch took their positions by the door, weapons raised. The tension in the air was palpable as the screeches of the Xanthi grew louder, signaling that they were moments away from breach. Voss steadied her rifle, her heart pounding in her chest. If they didn't hold off the aliens long enough, the Legion would remain trapped in their pods forever. The first wave of Xanthi appeared at the far end of the chamber, their long, spindly limbs scraping across the floor as they advanced with chilling speed. Voss squeezed the trigger, her rifle booming in the quiet chamber as a Xanthi soldier dropped, its grotesque body crumpling to the floor. Finch fired next, taking out another one with a clean shot to the head. But there were too many of them. The Xanthi flooded the room, their claws clashing against the metal of the chamber as they attacked relentlessly. The team fought back, but the weight of the enemy was overwhelming. Voss's vision blurred with the adrenaline rushing through her veins as she fought to stay focused on the task at hand. "McAllister, how much longer?" she shouted as another Xanthi lunged at her, narrowly dodging its razor-sharp claws. "Almost there." McAllister's voice was tight with concentration. "Just a few more seconds." With a sudden hiss, the first cryochamber pod opened, its mechanical systems coming to life with a burst of energy. A soldier clad in archaic but powerful armor stepped forward, his eyes blinking in confusion as he adjusted to the environment. "Welcome back, soldier," Voss said, her voice hoarse with relief. "We need you. Now." The soldier nodded, his expression unreadable. Without a word, he hefted his weapon, moving into position beside Finch and Cooper. The next pod opened, and another warrior emerged, followed by a third, then a fourth. The Legion was awakening, and with them came the hope that humanity could fight back. As the soldiers moved into position, taking up arms alongside the team, Voss felt a surge of pride. These were the warriors who had been created for this very moment, to face the Xanthi and ensure humanity's survival. The battle was far from over, but with the Legion now at their side, the tide was beginning to turn. The Xanthi may have thought they had humanity cornered, but they were wrong. This was only the beginning. Humanity was fighting back, not just for survival, but for the future. And the Forsaken Edge, once a forgotten stronghold, was now the crucible where humanity would reclaim its place in the stars.